Welcome to One-on-One, KOCT's new program, giving you, our resident viewer, an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the people in your community. This program is kind of an interesting look, an in-depth look at why and how people make the decisions in their life and how they end up here in our community at different points in their lives. With us tonight is Dick Lyon. Dick Lyon's been the mayor of Oceanside along with a number of other things. This is the second installment in our premiere edition of the program. We've talked a little earlier about Dick Lyon and where he was born and how his career has gone, and we've talked a little bit about his educational background, his swim exploits, his making the Olympic team at a given time period, and his military career. Dick, let's just jump right back into where we were, and this is kind of a fun situation because you had some time where World War II ended, and you came out of World War II, you stayed on as an intelligence officer in the scout program in China, going through Chiang Kai-shek and some kind of difficult times, but you're only 23 years old, still a young man trying to find his way through life, and you come out of China in 1946, and your military career appears to end at that time period. So let us know what happens in 46.
Well, actually, my active duty military career ended at that juncture. And I determined that, like my dad, who was not only my dad, he was my only swim coach until I went on to Yale under Bob Kippeth. But my dad was an active naval reservist, and I decided that I was going to do the same thing. And so I joined Naval Reserve right out of World War II, and until I ultimately retired. Many years later, I was never out of the Naval Reserve. I was always active and served in command of quite a few units along the way, and found myself being recalled out of Stanford University. I saw fit to continue my education.
Now, for our viewers that may have missed the first program or didn't catch this, you graduated with an engineering degree in 1944 from Yale.
Right.
Went through World War II, did
Yep.
your time in service in World War II, and then came out of World War II, and in 1950 you re-entered the master's program at Stanford?
That's correct, exactly. I went up there to take my master's degree, MBA at Stanford, which one of the very finest, along with, I think, Harvard and Wharton in the world. And I was very fortunate to go on up there. And as it turned out, my younger brother did the same thing at the same time. So we were both up there. And we were both naval reservists at that time. And in our first year, as it got into springtime of 1951, my brother got recalled, and I thought, oh.
Uh-oh, the Korean conflict was starting.
The Korean conflict had started on June 25th, 1950, and we were both had started at Stanford. So he was recalled and wound up on a minesweeper out in Korea. And as it turns out, I said, gee, that's too bad.
I thought you were lucking out at that time.
Goodbye. And about two weeks later, I got my notice. And I was recalled to an outfit called the Beach Jumpers, which worked out of an amphibious force in Coronado. And they deferred my reporting date until I finished my first year of biz school. And when I reported in June of 51, I found there were a lot of guys that I knew from World War II who were in special warfare, underwater demolition. And they said, well, it looks like we're all meeting, getting ready to do something here. And I understand, said one of them to me, that there's to be a new underwater demolition team formed and taken out almost immediately out to Korea. And I said, well, I've got orders to beach jumpers. Well, we talked about that for a while, and then it was decided that I would check in and check out on the first day of my arrival,
and
which
you
was
were reassigned to UDT.
And reassigned to UDT training. And that's another story, which is really kind of a fun thing, because all of us, not all of us, there were maybe a handful of us, I could name them all for you, but that wouldn't mean much. But we had all been through training at Fort Pierce, Florida. And it was pretty strenuous training. And we were faced with doing the same thing again. So they decided that I would go and see the prospective commanding officer, Lieutenant Commander Lou States, who is a wonderful Southern man, and I would present our case to him, which I did unsuccessfully.
Yeah, which you could have expected.
I presented the case to him and said that, you know, we've all been through this training before down in Fort Pierce, and I think we can be, you know, great assistance in mentoring these trainees through the program. And he said, Lieutenant Lyon, he's from South Carolina. He said, Lieutenant Lyon, he said, you can pause right there. He said, there ain't gonna be nobody on my underwater demolition team who don't go through the training. You understand that? Yes, sir. There's one exception, and he said, that's me.
And it was said.
And that was
and
it.
Therefore it was.
So I, along with, as I say, another handful, have the distinction of going through pretty rigorous training, including the infamous Hell Week, 2 times, once in Fort Pierce and the other time down in Coronado, where we were all part of underwater demolition training class 2. First class was all enlisted personnel going out to augment teams 1 and 3, which were already in Korea, and we established team 5. 1, 3, and 5 are all odd-numbered Pacific Fleet teams, and we managed to do it pretty well, and took the team out there, and we were out for a better part of a year.
And then that ended in '52.
And that ended in 1952, and so following, which for me was one of the most interesting experiences of my life, Captain States placed me in a one-man detail inside Wonsan Harbor, north of the 38th parallel, on doing some mine recovery work, which I found was absolutely fascinating for me, because I didn't know anything about mines, but I worked with the Mine Round 3 explosive ordnance disposal officer, who I would have trusted my life with, as it turns out, who I did trust
your life with. And mine work could be a little bit unnerving.
And it was kind of interesting doing that kind of mine work for about 4 months in very cold water. Water was 34 degrees in the winter 52. So,
well, that would be a tough one. Now then, '53, you had to come back to the United States and finish your degree.
And went back up to Stanford and finished my MBA. And
not one of the youngest kids on the farm.
No, not at that point. I'm getting to be an old guy at that point. I was in my late 20s. Yeah. And finished that degree, became very interested in retailing marketing. And when I graduated, I went to work for the J.W. Robinson Company, which later merged with May Department Stores, and now is no longer in existence.
So. It was the May Company and Robinsons and the whole bit. But you kept your active duty military, or your reserve military career, going for 26 years.
That's right.
So you worked and started to develop a family during that time period.
That's right.
But you did come back. 1974 was a big watershed year for you. I'm jumping ahead, and maybe too far ahead, but what was significant right then?
The significant part was that after continuing in my reserve activity as a special warfare specialist with underwater demolition in the background, in 1974 the SEAL teams had been established, and I became SEAL qualified. And that's another story. Getting my jump qualification at Lakehurst, New Jersey in the dead of winter, a 3-week program in 2 weeks involving 10 free falls from at least 10,000 feet.
And you weren't a kid by that time either.
I was a Navy captain.
Yes.
at that point.
Wow.
This was in the late 60s. And as it turned out, 1974 was a surprise date for me because Navy Special Warfare didn't have any what are called flag rank officers, admirals. I was a Navy captain, and I figured my career was pretty well over.
As your father had made captain also.
That's correct. And so my dad had died in 1971, and we had a very close relationship. And he said, in essence, hang in there. He said, you're going to make flag rank. And I said, Dad, I don't, whether it happens or it doesn't happen, this is where I wanted to spend my Navy career.
It's been a pretty good career, no matter whether you made it or not.
Been a good ride. Well, my son and I had finished running on the beach. We were living in Balboa at the time. And Val and I had finished running on the beach, and I came back. I was in the shower, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang on the shower door. And I said, yeah. And Val said, Dad, there's some guy on the phone wants to talk to Admiral Lyon. And I said, what? And he said he's calling from the Pentagon. And I said, I think I better take that call. I think I better take the call, Val. I grabbed the towel, grabbed the phone, and sure enough, it was my then-to-be boss, Vice Admiral Pierre Charbonnet, was on the phone and congratulating me for being selected for flag. And I became the first Navy SEAL to be advanced to Admiral.
That'd be that's a pretty good honor there. Not only you're a Navy SEAL, but you make the Admiral.
It was a great honor. It was also a great surprise, I got to tell you.
It was a pretty good day in 1974.
Yes, it was. And the interesting thing is that now our Navy Special Warfare, known as Navy SEALs, has 8 admirals on active duty now, all the way from a new 4-star, the first ever to make 4 stars, who will be the commander of the Special Operations Command down at MacDill Air Force Base, Admiral Eric Olson. He's a wonderful man. And
you keep in contact with everybody still to this date?
Yeah. Well, I'm Tim. Yeah. I'm sort of the patriarch.
That's right. You started the program. You got to keep it going. Yeah. Well, and you also graduated from the National and Naval War Colleges. Also, was that during that time period
that was preceding that time, and that was maintaining my educational aspects of promotion along the way, all the way up to flag rank. So.
And throughout that naval career, it lasted 41 years, you had a couple of honors. Legion of Merit?
Yes, as a matter of fact, and I wear the rosette of the Legion of Merit.
You saw that on your lapel. You also got the Navy Commendation Medal and the Combat Action Ribbon.
Yeah.
So pretty good career during that time period. Pretty proud of what your accomplishments were.
I think it was a career, and along the way, I must tell you that I had so much help. I couldn't possibly take up all the time. I could take the time of the people who helped me on the way, and those who mentored me along the way. It never would have happened.
It's a lot about that. A lot about those people. And at the end of the program, maybe we can acknowledge some of those people for you too. Active duty in '78, Navy Reserve Readiness. You were ahead of that program. I think there's 2,400 people in that program.
That's right.
So you had that.
It continues now. It's known as the South Regional Readiness Command Southwest Region, which is literally all of the states in the southwest of the United States, and it's the largest reserve readiness command. And I'm very, very pleased that I was selected to establish that command down there as what was known in the Navy as a plank owner. Yeah, and I attended the retirement of a wonderful lady who was my secretary. She was a young lady at the time, and she has been there ever since. And of course, I'm long gone, and I looked up on the wall, and there were now 14 pictures of readiness commanders, and I was the first guy up there. And Lois had she says, well, I instructed all of you all the way along.
That's right. She was the one running the background there.
Exactly.
She had it going. The one constant.
Yeah.
Well, after 41 years, you retired in 1981.
Right.
You moved to Oceanside, been in Orange County, but in part of your Orange County duties, you did some community work up there, a lot with the Children's Hospital.
I, at the time, was serving as the. This happened before I went back on active duty to New Orleans as Deputy Chief of Naval Reserve, but I had served as the general manager of a new Robinson store in Anaheim, and got to know the people that were there, and a group of us decided that, with the help of the Sisters of the Order of St. Joseph at St. Joseph's Hospital, we would establish a children's hospital and a special wing which would be separate from St. Joseph's. And we did the fundraising and that sort of thing. 1962, we started it, and almost immediately we were very successful in raising the money, and the sisters helped us establish that, and we had a 44-bed start. It was called Children's Hospital of Orange County, and I served on that board as one of the founding trustees, and I was subsequently, I don't know how this happened, but I was president of the trustees when we decided we were going to expand it. So we went to 99 beds with another building program, and subsequently I got the nod again for another expansion, and we went to 166 beds, which is where it is now. It's a great facility, and as it turns out, sometimes these things are pretty unusual. My oldest daughter, Mary's youngest boy, was born with a heart defect, and Jeff wound up at age 1 day at Children's Hospital, Orange County, for open heart surgery by my good friend Dr. Alan Gazaniga, who's 6'6" and has hands about this much bigger than mine. But he's a pediatric thoracic surgeon, and he did the open heart surgery on my grandson, who wouldn't have lived without that.
Not always do you have the opportunity to plant a shade tree and then enjoy sitting underneath of it. In this particular case, you did.
That's a good way of putting it, Tim.
So,
But
you also were a registered principal, and you're in the financial business in Orange County before, and partially in Oceanside in 1981.
Well, the retail business got to be, and it is now, it's
a tough business.
It's a tough business, and it's 24/7, you might say. And I decided that there were other things in life that I wanted to enjoy, and particularly my family. So I decided to make the change and get into financial management, and that happened again. I went into an organization in Newport Beach called International Securities due to a friendship with the man who was the executive officer on the USS Horace A. Bass, APD 124, off which vessel I worked with my underwater demolition people along the east coast of northern Korea.
So and again, another degree of separation of the naval career.
And we had both
swimming.
And we had both gotten out of the active duty side, and Stan had gone to work with International Securities and had approached me and said, "Hey, it's time for you to come over." So I joined International Securities and became a registered principal and financial advisor. That's
why Oceanside in 1981? Why the change?
Well, when we came back after my last tour of active duty in New Orleans, where I was the senior reserve officer in the Navy on active duty, when I retired in '81, actually didn't return till '53. That's when the Navy cuts you free. I came off active duty in '81, came back to Southern California, knew I wanted to be in Southern California. Looked at Newport Beach and Balboa where we had lived, and the prices were just not affordable. So Cindy and I started looking up and down the coast, and we found Oceanside, which for us was affordable, and I thought I was going to play a lot of golf, so we found a place out in the valley very close to Oceanside Municipal Golf Course and settled there. And,
it didn't work out that way, though, because within a few years you got the itch, and the school board was something that was interesting
well,
for you.
that's a different thing, because at that point, Cindy and I had 3 small children. Our last 2 were born in New Orleans, where I was on active duty. They're little Cajun kids.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on,
So,
because you've got 9 children, so
yeah.
that's quite a bit.
And so I got active in Reynolds Elementary School on the PTA, and I was the only guy on the PTA board, along with 8 ladies. And the ladies decided that I should preside of the PTA board at Reynolds, which I did. And then they also decided I should run for school board, and I allowed them to talk me into that, and I did, and got elected, which was in 1990, and it was very, very educational for me, learning about the way a school board really functions. And it was a great experience, and I think maybe we did some good things. And that same group, along with some others, decided in 1992
to make the mayoral run.
to make the mayoral run, because Larry Bagley had decided that 3 terms was plenty. And so again, very interesting thing. I ran for mayor. My very good friend Bob Ornamundi was my campaign manager. His wonderful wife Gilda was my campaign treasurer. We didn't know anything about running a campaign, but we sure learned. And I walked most of 89 precincts in the city of Oceanside leading up to that vote in 1992. And as it turned out, I had previously accepted to go to Japan with Larry and Margene Bagley because we were invited by our sister city in Kisarazu to come over for their 50th anniversary of their independence as a municipality. And they run the schools, both schools and the government in Kisarazu. So that's how, as president of the board, I got invited, and I accepted. Well, the campaign went right into that time, and in November, at the election time, we were in Kisarazu, the Bagleys and the Lyons, and I got a phone call
That you were elected.
that I was elected from Bob Ornamundi, whom you knew, I think. And,
Oh, yes. So you've got that first term, and it turns to a second term.
yeah.
And you enjoyed your time period as the mayor of the city of Oceanside?
I think it was again one of those experiences for me which was both pleasing in that we were able to make a lot of accomplishments. As it turns out, my very first year, the first thing I had to do was to get a city manager. Jim Turner was an interim city manager when I was elected. And his first words to me were, "Congratulations, Mayor," and his second words were, "I'm not going to be your city manager."
Oh, I remember Jim well. Just passed away recently.
I know, and a wonderful man. And he went back to being water utilities director. And 5 months after I was elected, and following a search, we had Tom Wilson on board as the city manager, who was also outstanding, a great, very professional city manager. And as I look back on it, I was really so blessed to have wonderful people, very professional people working with me as the on-board staff, as well as the elected officials. Of course, at that election in '92, 3 of us became brand new members of City Council because Colleen O'Hara was also elected and Terry Johnson was elected. So it was kind of a new City Council along with carryovers, Don Rodee and Nancy York. So it was.
You had a great career from that time period of 8 years, and now we've got the last couple minutes of the program. I want to make sure we focus a little bit on the family. You've got a big family. I'll let you tell us about your family and how that works. Then at the end of the program, we're just kind of wrap up with important people in your life and how they help form what you've accomplished through your life. So first, tell us about your family.
Well, you mentioned important people. The most important person in my life is Cindy Lyon, who you know, and Cindy and I were married in 1975, and she took on really the kids from my previous marriage and just brought them all on board, 5 kids, and then we had 3 more. So, and I always say that I have 9 children because we lost a little boy in 1971 to cancer, and that was a personal tragedy for me, along with the loss of my mom and dad almost the same time. So it was,
and that goes into our last moment to talk about people. Part of our program here is to focus on how you made those decisions and your character and what you've accomplished in your life. Not only those stories of the life, but how you got to those positions. And you noticed, I think it was Bob Kippeth, the swim coach, and your father were big influences, and also your wife. Were those the people that helped develop the character and helped you to succeed?
No question about it. And I know Cindy will be watching this program, and she still shapes my life. There we go. And
she's very patient.
She's very patient. She's very understanding, and she is one smart lady. She's an angel, and those who know her well will agree with me on that. She does so many things on her own that are, including being the chair of the Trauma Intervention Program and executive director and volunteer for that wonderful program in San Diego. And she is always doing something for somebody else, which is, you know, how can I say it any better? That's what more could a person do.
Dick, you've had a spectacular career. It's not over. You still enjoy playing a little bit of golf. You still do a little sailing on a regular basis.
Yes, I do.
Is there more things for Dick Lyon to go over the next few years?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I'm all, you know, you may have read in my bio that I'm also a private pilot, but my pilot, when I was last on active duty, young Mark Cheney, when I was being discharged, because he'd been my flight instructor also, I learned how to fly on a Navy jet, which is another story. But he said, Admiral, he said, let me give you some advice. And I said, Lieutenant, you're giving an Admiral some advice?
That's not how it works.
He said, I know. He said, when you're out of the Navy, he said, either fly a lot or don't fly.
Not at all.
Or don't fly at all. So now I've taken to flying model airplane, the radio-controlled airplanes.
His advice was well taken.
It's a lot of fun. When I crash, it doesn't hurt at all.
Well, Dick Lyon, thank you for coming on the program.
Not at all.
I'll let our viewers know that this is your station and your program, and hopefully this was an interesting situation for you to hear, and the character and the things that help shape our community members' lives, and how those lives take part of all of our lives. I hope you enjoyed the program. If you have other people that you'd like to see on our program, this is not a regular every week or every month program, but if this is a program you'd like to see and you'd like to see more of it, let us know, and we'd be glad to take a look at those other people that help shape our community. Thanks for watching One on One.